I think many of you have noticed that Qatar has become one of the most influential allies of the Donald Trump administration in the Middle East. This small country's size has been especially noticeable recently. As Donald Trump himself stated when he went to the Middle East to sign the peace agreement on the Gaza Strip, quote, "Para eles caos da peace, Qatar provided tremendous help in this matter." I hope people understand this. It was very difficult and very dangerous for Qatar. They showed great courage. But you will be surprised at what other global political issues Qatar is cooperating with the Donald Trump administration on. It's from Rwanda all the way to Venezuela. At the beginning of this month, Trump gave Qatar real security guarantees from the United States, which are equivalent to Article 5 of the NATO Charter. Of course, you could joke and say that Trump is so favorably disposed toward Qatar because Qatar gave him a plane, but it's much more complicated than that. Today, Trump is praising Qatar in every possible way, but during his first presidential term, that same Trump actually accused Qatar of financing terrorism in the region. But what was the real reason for such a sharp change in Trump's rhetoric? Why is Qatar a key United States ally in the Middle East? And how is this related? Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States of America. My name is Alexei Pichi. Today is October 19th. Let's go through everything step by step. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave any comment, and subscribe to the Pichi News Telegram channel. The link is in this video's description. And if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. It says support the Alexei Pichi channel. Pick the option that's most convenient. I will be grateful for any support you can give. So, United States officials, regional sources, and various experts claim that a significant improvement in relations between the United States and Qatar has become possible, thanks to, who would have thought, the development of personal connections between Donald Trump and members of his inner circle, as well as the leaders of Qatar, a constant lobbying campaign, and Qatar's ability to act as an effective mediator between the United States and a large number of players, including the Taliban, the Houthis, Iran, and Hamas. Well, and it's worth mentioning here that Trump demonstrated the importance of his relationship with Qatar during his second term by including the small country in his first overseas trip after the inauguration. According to current United States officials and regional diplomats, Trump immediately took advantage of the connections he had established during his first term, and these connections were strengthened by business deals that his friends and family made with Qatar in recent years. Yes, that's right, friends. You heard correctly. These connections are built on the business interests of Donald Trump's family. The Trump family's business ties with the Middle East have more than tripled since his first presidential term. Earlier this year, Trump Organization announced plans to build a Trump-branded golf resort in Qatar, which is being financed by a company funded by the Qatar Sovereign Wealth Fund. That means Trump managed to get his projects in Qatar funded, at least in part with money from Qatari taxpayers. Sources also claim that the Emir of Qatar maintains direct contact with Trump not only now, but also kept in touch with him during the years when he was not serving as president, which actually is not something all world leaders did. According to sources, such an acquaintance contributed to productive, trusting, and straightforward interactions. Well, that's what has just become known. It was Qatar that helped develop a 21-point plan for establishing peace in the Gaza Strip. Later, Steve Witkoff showed this plan and shared it with Arab and Muslim countries in New York. This led to key discussions that laid the groundwork for the release of hostages and a ceasefire, which happened there just a few weeks later. And then, when important negotiations took place in Egypt last week, Trump's chief envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner held a meeting. A private meeting with Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya and a high-ranking Qatari official. And according to sources familiar with the situation, this meeting led to a breakthrough in the negotiations. This happened at a time when Hamas was seeking assurances that Israel would not resume the war after the group released the Israeli hostages it was holding. And it was the Qataris who invited Witkoff and Kushner to this meeting. The meeting played a crucial role in reaching the agreement on the release of hostages and the implementation of the ceasefire. Simply put, this agreement wouldn't have happened without Qatar's help. Trump highly praised the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, when they, together with other regional leaders, signed an agreement aimed at regional peace. And here they'll quote Trump, so you can understand how, I would say, to some extent, he is respectful, even flattering to the Emir of Qatar. Quote, "His Highness Sheikh Tamim is universally respected. Everyone respects him, and in the most positive way. Not only because of his power, but also because of his kind heart. He has a huge heart, he is a great leader, and his country loves him." But Donald Trump isn't just tossing out flattery. Last week, there was an announcement that Qatar was allowed to build an Air Force training center in Idaho. Yes, pilots from other countries have trained there for a long time. But for the Pentagon to allow another country to build an entire military base, that's a first. Nevertheless, Qatar remains such a controversial topic in Donald Trump's orbit, and some key allies of the United States president are expressing deep concern about the growing influence of this country. Well, for example, in the United States Congress, they openly say that they remain in the dark about Qatar's relationship with the Trump administration, even on issues that directly affect the states represented by those very congressmen. Well, as Cable News Network reports today, the entire Idaho congressional delegation led by the Republican Party, which includes the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Jim Risch, and the Republican governor, only learned that the administration had officially approved the deal to train the Qatari Air Force in Idaho after it was publicly announced by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. They found out from the news. It even got to the point where Trump pushed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to apologize to Qatar for the strike on Doha, when the Israelis were targeting Hamas militants who were hiding there. But we shouldn't forget that the relationship between Trump and Qatar was tense from the very beginning, to say the least, during his first presidential term. In June 2017, at the beginning of the diplomatic crisis triggered by the severing of diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt and Bahrain, and the blockade of Qatar, Trump harshly criticized Doha at that time. At that time, all the United countries accused Qatar of financing terrorism, and Qatar really ended up under blockade, and Trump supported this blockade. Moreover, he even called, apparently, for strikes against Qatar to stop the financing of terrorism. Trump was generally hostile toward this country, and later, then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and top military officials began to brief Trump in more detail about the strong relationship between the United States and Qatar, both militarily and diplomatically. In particular, they provided detailed information that Al Udeid, the largest United States military base in the region, is located in Qatar. And it was during this period that Qatar began to realize, listen, it seems that not only have the regional players turned away from us, but even the United States, represented by the president, is starting to, go against us. And it was during this period that Qatar began investing huge amounts of money in a massive campaign to hire lobbyists and retirees. They started hiring heavyweight Republicans. For example, did you know that the current Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, was an officially registered lobbyist for Qatar during Donald Trump's first presidential term? But as a former Trump administration official told Cable News Network, over time, the blockade made Trump more favorable toward Qatar. The Gulf countries claimed that the blockade was an attempt to put economic pressure on Qatar because of its alleged support for terrorism. But according to the official, Trump was concerned that the blockade would stifle progress and economic ties in the region. And Trump shifted his criticism to Saudi Arabia, saying that it was being too harsh with Qatar. And in 2018 and 2019, Trump personally received the Emir of Qatar in the Oval Office. And now comes the most interesting part. As it became known during that period, negotiations were taking place in Doha between the United States of America and the Afghan Taliban, and Trump insisted on ending the war in Afghanistan. Yes, and then Trump very loudly criticized Joe Biden for withdrawing American troops from Afghanistan, conveniently forgetting to mention to everyone that he was the one who actually initiated the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan. The situation in Trump's relations with Qatar changed dramatically after the signing of the Doha Agreement between the Taliban and the Afghan government, which marked the beginning of the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan. I want to emphasize, all of this happened under President Donald Trump. Trump's main negotiator with the Taliban was named Zalmay. Khalilzad spent a lot of time with Taliban representatives in Doha, and these meetings paved the way for signing the agreement that the Americans would leave Afghanistan. And here's what John Bolton, who was Trump's national security advisor at the time, says about that period. Quote, "At that moment, they started moving toward the relationship they have now. The American president asked them to do something, and they did it. Already, during Trump's second term, the administration repeatedly turned to Qatar when other mediators failed to deliver results. During the negotiations on Gaza, at the beginning of this year, the administration at some point tried a new tactic. They put a Palestinian American who was not an official in charge of negotiations with Hamas to try to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. But when this approach did not yield results, the administration switched back to Qatar as the key partner in dealing with this group. A similar situation occurred with the attempt to engage Iran in a new nuclear deal. The Trump administration initially relied on Oman as a mediator in the months-long indirect negotiations with Iran led by Steve Witkoff, but when those talks failed, the Trump administration turned to Qatar again for dialogue with Iran. In the end, the deal was never reached, and Trump struck Iranian nuclear facilities. However, the importance of Qatar as a reliable mediator was reaffirmed. However, the United States and Qatar's efforts are also extensive. And here Dr. Majid Al-Ansari, a representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Qatar, noted the wide range of issues the country is working on with Trump. Here is his quote. "Right now, we are working with the Donald Trump administration on the issue of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda. We are working with them on the issue of Venezuela. We are working with them on the issue of Colombia. We are working with them on the issue, on a number of issues, some of which I can't explain or mention right now. All of them are related to promoting peace. Such a high regard for relations in Qatar has not gone unnoticed. This goes beyond one person, but cooperation with President Trump, very close cooperation with this administration, has brought many results. In short, the Qataris are determined to continue working with Trump. But the whole point is that these relationships were built exclusively on business schemes, on the fact that during the interpresidential period, Trump's family established quite good relations with Qatari businessmen and is trying to build business there. That's why the gift of a plane is nothing more than an attempt to further appease the American president. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care, goodbye. To be continued.